Hello everybody and welcome back to World of Warships and Legends. My name is Spartan Elite 43 and tonight we have our first look at the Ignis Purgatio Warhammer 40k crossover event ship. And that's a mouthful, I don't care who you say. Anyway, so first things first, let's look at our commanders. We get to use William Sims on it. We're obviously using Andrew Cunningham and Robert Jajard as our commander inspirations. We've got Flammable Cannoneer, Gyrating Drill Bits, Marksmanship, and we're using Emergency Specialist. It's something I switched recently with all the fire starters on my Battleship build, so I no longer use the Reaching Out XXL as my last perk. And then we are Legendary 3 with a Will to Rebuild. Alright, and then if we look at the ship itself, we've got upgrades. We've got secondary battery mod 2 because we don't get a chance to use the main battery dispersion like you would on the Japanese, because the Americans at tier 7 get the plus 11% dispersion. You don't get it to use it in your first slot, unfortunately. So anything below tier 7 American battleship wise, you don't get to use the dispersion. It's not very much fun. Anyway, so secondary battery, mainly because extra traverse speed is not worth losing reload time, in my opinion. Now if we move there to steering gears mod 2, just because we need to be able to turn this ship, because again it needs to get all the guns involved, so being able to flip the rear out and get the guns involved is nice. And then of course target acquisition mod, because we need to be able to see ships and it's the only thing available, so might as well use that. Alright, so the loadout, we're using the standard camo, which is obviously one of the sickest camos in the game right now. I'll be honest, this is one of the sexiest ships out there right now. It really is, just from the camo perspective. Didn't run the flag on it at the moment. Survivability, we got 52,280 hit points, which is less than the Nagato. It's only got 25% damage reduction, so you don't want to be taking torpedoes in this, just like the Iowa, just like all of the other, minimal cross-section battleships. You just don't want to do it too often. Artillery, we got the 410mm guns that the Japanese tier 6 and 7 love, which is nice, but at the same time not quite. They reach out to 17.3 kilometers with our current build. They reload 28 seconds, and they turn 180 degrees in 30 seconds, which isn't bad. That's why I say you don't really need the traverse speed on the turrets. HE shell damage 6,000. Chance to set on fire 26%, which is a little low compared to some of the other battleships in the game, considering, this thing has 410mm guns. Now, it's got a lot of secondaries. That's to be expected for the Japanese battleships, even though this is an American battleship. Maximum speed, 24.3 knots. It's not fast, but that's partly attributed to our current build. It's right there with my Iowa, a little slower than my Iowa, I believe. 770 meter turning radius is actually not bad. If you think about it, the Alabama turns 710 meters, so it's not bad. Rudder shift time is only 11 seconds. That's pretty good, especially for a battleship. And then concealment, it's a battleship. 14.2 kilometers, not good. I mean, for a battleship, it's decent. Detectability by airs, 12 kilometers, 2 kilometer guaranteed, obviously, and then detectability while firing in smoke. Yeah, basically get absolutely no, well, that's weird. So, firing from smoke gets you detected further than firing than your regular, okay, I got it, never mind. I was looking at it wrong. So, detectability by sea is if you're not firing your guns, this is how far you'll be detected regardless, and then detectability by firing in smoke would be 14.4, which is a nice reduction from the 17.3 kilometers that we would be detected normally. So, okay, I was freaking myself out for a second. Okay, I got it. Sorry about that, guys. We've got Sure Shot here. Shells with good ballistic trajectory maintain velocity and make aiming easier. Now, that's something I will say, is that it does have a flat firing arc. That's both a good thing and a bad thing, depending on where you're at. Frail, it has a below average base HP rating, and that's something that is not preferable. You're in a battleship, you're going to get focused. These things already take hits pretty badly. You'll take a lot of damage from just about everything, and you don't have as many hit points, so keep that in mind. Now, this might be a good time to go for a tank build, but honestly, is it really worth it? Probably not. You'll probably want to try to max out your guns to, you know, keep everybody at bay. Now, originally designed for a naval mission of the purpose now long forgotten, Ignis Purgatio was lost during the Horus Heresy. That's a mouthful. After missing for several millennia, the ship was rediscovered on one of the frontier worlds in the Jericho Reach. Though clearly a warship, it was put to use as a transport by its new uncouth masters, who failed to recognize its true potential. After undergoing intensive repairs and cleansing its quarters of its previous inhabitants, oh god, that's grim. Ignis Purgatio was eventually returned to Imperial Navy service, and since then it has become an essential component of Battlefleet Solar. Once again, it acts as a fearsome guard dog for humanity and, by proxy, the Emperor himself. Entered service in 30,798, and there was one of them in service. Now, you guys can say what you want about, you know, the crossover events and so forth and how realistic and whatnot, but I'll be real honest, this is a sexy looking ship. The black and the gold, that's pretty sexy. The figurehead at the front, I mean, I've never played any of the Warhammer series, so I honestly couldn't tell you anything, but do not question the will of the Emperor. That's all I'm saying. And she is a very good looking ship. So, with that being said, let's get to the gameplay. Alrighty, so we are going to go into what I think about the ship. Now, we got a pretty good game out of it, and like I said, it's not that big a deal. I personally, just right out the gate, if you guys, you know, want my opinion right out the bat, don't feel like it's worth the money. If you're a 40K fan, then you'll probably be looking into it. If you're somebody who's a collector of the game that wants to get all the ships, then you'll probably be looking into it. But for the regular person, I just don't find it necessary. You know, you've got the tier 6 Nagato that you can get without spending any actual money. You go through the tech tree, get it. It's Japanese, so you can use the dispersion at the beginning of the dispersion perk or equipment, whatever you want to call it. You get the -7% to dispersion. So because this is American, we don't get that. And I'm not sure if the ballistics of American ships get to or get used by this, because it's an American ship technically now. I honestly don't know enough about the game to get into those sort of specifics. I could probably ask the developers, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's firing different shells. It doesn't seem like it's got anything different than the standard Nagato, other than the fact that it just doesn't have any hit points compared to the regular. I mean, think about it. This thing has as many hit points as my Baltimore. Okay? Baltimore's a heavy cruiser. So this is a tier 6 battleship with 52,000 hit points. It's not preferable. But as long as you're not completely goobered, you're going to be okay in this thing. It's got, you know, 410mm guns that have plenty of penetration. You've got a decent all-around ship, but I just don't know if it's worth the money. Now, it's a beautiful ship. If you're into the aesthetics of ships, then this is definitely something you might be interested in. But, you know, as somebody who's not really crazy one way or the other about whether or not a ship looks all that great, I'm more worried about how it performs, and honestly, this thing performs similarly to the Nagato in the fact that it's just, you know, the Nagato used to be amazing. I haven't played it since, so I don't know what the nerf did to it, but personally, the Nagato used to be amazing. And this is not amazing by any stretch of the imagination. I've only had one real good game out of it. I've had a bunch of average games, a bunch of slightly above average games. You guys are going to get to see the one good game that I've had so far, and it was the first match that I jumped into today. So that's a good thing. But you'll notice the first thing that you're going to see is that we are top tier, and that means that we have the biggest guns in the match. Well, of course, if we were Tier 7, or in the Tier 7 match, we'd have the biggest guns as well. But what I'm saying is, being top tier, you have a lot of advantages. One thing that we don't have is a health advantage. There is a hood out there, and that hood... Now, look how early these torpedoes get detected. Like, we detect these torpedoes from a long ways out. And, unfortunately, our teammate is still literally going to let them sail right into the side of his ship. And I sometimes just wonder what they're doing to not pay attention to that extent. But as you can see, we're going to push up in here. The Jervis has already been spotted coming our direction. He's already nuked the ever-living crap out of our friendly battleship that was to my right. And so we are going to sail right at him. Now, we've got high explosive already loaded because we want to make sure that we get a chance. And the Icarus is all like... I thought it was a Jervis. It's actually an Icarus. So that makes the fact that he just absolutely nuked our battleship even worse. But this Icarus is going to make a huge mistake, and that means he's going to come back. I don't know if he thought he could take on our destroyer 1v1, but he's not 1v1. I'm right here, and I have high explosive loaded, and he's about to have a bad day. As we hit him with the front guns only, temporarily knock out his torpedo tubes and take about a quarter of his health with one salvo. Now, unfortunately, our destroyer's in a bad way as well, because not only is he fighting the Icarus, he's also fighting an Atlanta, who has now come around the corner to absolutely ruin him. Luckily for us, he does manage to finish off the Icarus just before getting finished off by the enemy Atlanta. Now, we get out here and try to fire. We've got the high explosive right off the bat because that's what was loaded. We knock out his propulsion. And now we are going to go ahead and load up the armor piercing and get ready for a full salvo. Now, we don't really have anything to fear from the Atlanta. He's not going to do enough damage over time before I shoot him, so I'm not too worried about that. He's got very short-range torpedoes, so I don't have to really worry about that. So it's mainly just, are we going to be able to kill him with this shot? And he turns just as we pull the trigger, so he narrowly avoids just getting nuked right off the planet. As a lot of our rounds just absolutely missed him. But he is now inside secondary range. We have the buff to our secondaries. His torpedo tubes on the right side just got temporarily knocked out, and he doesn't live long enough to actually do much of anything. Now, he did launch his torpedoes, I believe, so that's something that we're going to have to watch for. So we immediately turned towards him to avoid the torpedoes, and as we were turning back to get a broadside on the Aoba, we almost screwed up. Almost. You see, I had to catch it real quick. But that's where the quick rudder shift for a battleship, that's where this ship is a little bit more agile than most of the battleships in the game. It's not bad. And then we get the Citadel hit on the Aoba to finish him off. And that leaves this Nelson out here all alone in the middle of the ocean. Now, we have all 3 capture points. We have a ship advantage right now. But you can see the Colorado to my right is fighting our other battleship that went that way. And so I don't know what's going to happen there, but one of them is broadside. The other is bow tanking. The enemy Colorado is bow tanking as we get our first Citadel on the Nelson. Nelson versus 16-inch guns is not a good day. But Aoba finishes off the Fuso on our team, not preferable. Normandy finishes off our Pensacola, again, not preferable, and suddenly we find ourselves at a disadvantage in ships. Luckily, the Colorado goes broadside on, if you're looking at the minimap, and the Scharnhorst is able to finish him off with fires. So Scharnhorst was pushing up on the Colorado. Colorado let him get too close, probably took some torpedoes, and then ended up burning to death at the end. But the Scharnhorst, the problem with the Scharnhorst is he's completely out of the fight now. There is no way that he catches up to us to be able to help with the rest of the team. Now, right now, a smart play would just be to stop what we're doing and turn away, defend our caps, and we win. But we have a cruiser here that has torpedoes in the Fiji. We have me, who has all of my hit points left, and I'm a pretty decent battleship captain, if I say so myself. So I feel pretty confident that I can take down a tier 5 battleship and a couple tier 6 battleships, especially when we've already taken over half the health from one of the tier 6s. So I feel pretty confident in my abilities here. And you're going to see my overconfidence kind of get me into some trouble a little bit here as we go broadside on to a Nelson who decides, for one of the rare times you'll ever see a Nelson do it, to fire armor piercing. I was expecting high explosive, I'm not going to lie. Almost every Nelson I come across fires high explosive, but we get another Citadel hit on him. Surprisingly not getting more than one, but with... I'm assuming this thing still has Japanese dispersion because we're only getting 1 or 2 hits per salvo. So I'm assuming it's still got the Japanese dispersion. But as you can see, I start to turn in because I see the armor piercing incoming, and he gets a pretty solid hit on us. Not a Citadel, but enough of a hit that I'm like, okay, that was reckless. Probably shouldn't do that again. But the Fiji finishes him off, and that leaves this Hood and the Normandy directly ahead of us. Now, luckily, both of them are broadside on. Now, you'll see I ping the Normandy here in a minute, and what I'm doing is saying, hey, Normandy is a lower tier ship and lower health ship. Let's get them off the map. That's less guns shooting at us. Less guns that we have to worry about is preferable. But you're also going to see this Hood firing at us with those amazing British armor-piercing rounds that do ridiculous amounts of damage without having to get Citadels, because they hit so many shells. They hit so many shells into your superstructure, into your deck armor, that they are just absolutely devastating, even without getting Citadels. Which is what you're about to see in a moment when this Hood gets a slightly over-angled me and hits me for a good chunk of my health. But he's also given me a broadside, and this is usually where the Hood gets absolutely pummeled. A Hood broadside is death. Anybody that's ever played the Hood knows what I'm talking about. Bow on or stern tanking, the thing is pretty tanky. Especially with the British heal that you get, it's a very tanky ship. But if you over-angle, if you turn that thing broadside, it can be citadeled even by cruisers. And you can see his fast fire rate is catching up to me. And I've lost quite a bit of hit points, but he is a flat broadside. He's about to take a torpedo. We're in secondary range, so we're actually pummeling him with that. And then we absolutely citadel him, and he's lucky that we only got one. That should have been an outright deletion right there, but he got pretty lucky, and our secondaries are just absolutely pummeling him. Now, the Nagato and the Amagi, they have a lot of secondaries, but they're short-range secondaries, much like the Iowa. They're not as useful in a lot of situations, but when you get down into these sort of ranges, the Iowa, the Amagi, all of the Nagato, all of these secondaries that we have are much more effective than, say, the Bismarck, who has really long-range secondaries, but they don't hit the target, or they just don't do as much damage at those ranges. But Normandy here is going to be saved by the clock because we're about to finish the 1,000 hit points as we fire another rear gun into him, and he gets saved by dispersion, as we only get like 2 penetrations. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. It's not a bad ship. It's not something personally that I would go out and buy, even though it is a gorgeous looking ship. But you can see we finished second on the team. Fiji, I don't know how. I guess it would just go Potif. We'll call you Potif. Appreciate you, man. 4 kills, no slouch in the Fiji. So if you like what we're doing, punch the like button, leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and as always, I will see you in the next video.